If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen.
This is a replay of WIBW show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by Briggs Auto Group. I am Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com, and the man across the studio for me is the one, the only Scott Chasen. Scott, I escaped my hotel room in Houston. I'm no longer in here. I'm here. I'm right. I'm across the studio.
I see you.
I'm here.
Fitz, I said this to our producer director after the show. I did not realize how much speaking was involved doing your role. I have so much more respect for you now. I'm impressed you still have a voice when we get out of here. You have no respect for me. You can interact with us on social media. He didn't respond to that. At Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions on our Twitter page. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at GoPowerCat.com. Did I say that right, Scott? I think you got most of it.
GoPowerCat.com. We will start things off with our 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill sponsored by Vanderbilt's Your Work Boot Center. Well, Scott, KU basketball fell to Texas Tech yesterday, 75-67. Neither team was at 100%, but was this loss cause for concern in Lawrence?
Fitz, I actually think it was. There have been a few games this year that were a little too close for comfort, maybe not as concerning as this one. Now, I think there were two kind of branches of how KU lost this game. The first was turnovers, guard play. Guys weren't getting the ball in positions where they could score. Kansas only scored 67 points. A lot of that's because Remy Martin banged up. He tried to give it a go. He played limited minutes, but just clearly not the same guy. And Remy Martin, you know, if you want to call him the point guard or not, whatever, he's KU's offensive engine because of how the other players are able to play off him. Take Christian Brown, for example. He's at his most deadly when he can catch the ball in the wing, face a closeout, maybe pump fake, get into the lane, or shoot that three-point shot. But in this game, with no Remy Martin to get into the paint and kick it out to Christian Brown, now he's having to create a whole lot more. He really didn't get going until late. Same for Ochai Agbaji, although Ochai Agbaji scored offensively, didn't play too well defensively. The second problem in this game, and it has been a problem for most of the year, it was that big man position. KU got absolutely blasted in terms of points in the paint. David McCormick wasn't very good. At one point, KU went to zone. It sort of worked for a little bit, but then the big man position faltered again. This is a team that actually has some problems now, and a big part of it is David McCormick hasn't been the David McCormick that ended last year. Now, look, normally I think there's some kind of variance in the performance of college players. A lot of them are 18 to 22-year-olds, figuring it out. David McCormick's been around the block. This is his fourth year in college. He's been starting games. He's been relied on. And Bill Self has tried just about everything you can try. He's given him praise. He's kind of called him out. He benched him for a game or two and then, gave him a bigger role when he was playing well. At this point, it's on David McCormick to figure out what David McCormick needs to get going, because this team needs David McCormick to get going. Someone pointed out on Twitter he had an awful plus-minus in this game. That meant, the other team outscored KU by a lot when he was on the court. I went back and looked. He's led the big men in plus-minus in 9 out of 14 games this year, which you'd say, okay, he's been, about the best big man 2/3 of the time. That's not good enough from an all Big 12 player. Do you think Frank Mason was the best point guard in the game 2/3 of the time? No, if you're the starting center, you're playing most of the minutes. You need to be the man every night, and he has not done that so far.
I hate the plus-minus. I just hate it.
It can be misleading, especially for a single game. That's why I don't like looking at it without context.
Right.
But I think in this case, when you're playing one big man, you can see a little bit of how the other guys are working around him.
I would agree with that.
Well, Fitz, K-State is off to a little bit of a rocky start in Big 12 play with 3 straight losses and a thin roster thanks to a COVID outbreak. Can Bruce Weber's Wildcats recover?
They will recover from COVID. I don't know if they will recover from this start. It's been pretty dicey for the Wildcats. They played with 7 scholarship players last week against Texas. Then they went to West Virginia, had 8 scholarship players. And, they had a little bit more of a roster for this game, but they didn't have coaches. Bruce Weber and Chris Lowry, the number 1 and 2 coach, they've been out for both of these games. Shane Southwell led the team against Texas. They looked good for a half, and then they slowly dwindled and lost that game. Well, Shane Southwell then had COVID, and so Jermaine Henderson was the only remaining full-time coach on the staff healthy, and that's good enough for the Big 12. You got 1 coach, you got 6 players, you can go play. I think it's nonsense, but those are the rules, and that's what K-State did, and boy, did they play for a half at West Virginia, led by as much as 17, led by 13 at half, and then started to slowly see it slip away as the referees kind of bent towards Bob Huggins' favor, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying anything went wrong here. I'm just saying when you play West Virginia, a very physical team, and only 11 fouls or so are called on the Mountaineers, you're probably going to lose. And that's what happened. But it was only by 3 points, and it was a really great effort by these Wildcats. Those things kind of give you hope, but yet they are still losses. And so hopefully when this team returns home on Wednesday night to play TCU, a team it has to beat at home, they'll be back to their regular numbers. They'll be back fully staffed on the coaching bench, and they'll be able to really handle the Frogs. Why is that important? Because if you look at the rest of January, Scott, the full width of the Big 12 just hits K-State right in the face with games against Tech and Texas and KU, and it just piles up on the Wildcats as they close out this month. They better get to winning, and they better do it soon, because I don't think the excuse of COVID is going to save anyone from losing a job this season like it did last.
For sure. It's funny you brought up officiating. I know, obviously, Allen Fieldhouse, a hard place to play, and people bring that up. 2 Big 12 venues that I think are really tough when it comes to officiating. West Virginia, because of how physical they play, as you pointed out. Texas Tech, same thing, especially when they had Chris Beard as the coach. Felt like they'd get a few extra, charge calls that they might not get other places.
I love Hugs, but watching him work the refs is just unbelievable that the refs put up with it, because he called a timeout at one point and just talked to the ref the whole time. I mean, it's just crazy with the stuff they allow him to do instead of saying, go coach your team.
Mm-hmm. Well, Fitz, we've already seen some upsets in Big 12 action. Iowa State fell to Oklahoma. Kansas lost to Texas Tech. Texas lost to Oklahoma State. And number 1 Baylor was trailing TCU at halftime. Fitz, how competitive is this league going to be this year?
Oh, by the way, I forgot Baylor is also on an upcoming game for the Wildcats. It's incredible. This conference is brutal. And this is my thing about K-State. This K-State team is better. There's no doubt. I mean, anyone can watch them play and realize that this is a better team. But in this conference, I don't think it's good enough. And Scott, this conference is just going to be brutal on everyone. I mean, I don't see anyone get through this conference probably without 3 losses maybe. KU already has 1. We'll see how it all plays out, but it's just going to be such a grind, particularly if they have to start making up COVID games, because we've already lost a few games that have been not played because of it. Scott, you could end up in February, late February, playing 3 games in a week, and all against really good top 25 type teams. And I don't even know what to say about this league. I saw one bracketology that had 3 Big 12 teams as number 1 seeds. Now that all waters out as we see teams beating each other, but boy, Scott, this league is just brutal. It always is tough, but this year it's unbelievable how good it is.
Yeah, well, after the KU loss, Bill Self made a comment that no one was going to escape the Big 12 this year with 1 loss or no losses. And then he paused and he said, maybe Baylor's the team that's good enough to do that. I don't think that was fake humble. I think Baylor is that good. I think Baylor's the best team in the nation right now. But after that, I mean, Texas had some legitimate top 5-ish buzz going into the season. No one expected the start from Iowa State. Oklahoma State has proven that it can be a little bit peskier than maybe expected. Oklahoma is a good team. Kansas is a good team. There is so much, just so much in this conference. And then when you look at the bottom, and I know we talked about this last week, if you're a coach last year, you're thinking, okay, K-State's coming in. This is kind of an easy game. Maybe same with Iowa State. This year, you're looking at K-State and you're going, are you kidding me? This is a 7-10 team in a power conference. It's crazy. Top to bottom, this is the best the league's ever been, I think.
I agree, and I look around at other leagues, and I just wonder, hypothetically, where would this K-State team finish, say, in the Pac-12?
Yeah.
I bet you're pretty close to the top. Now, a quick look at your poll question results. The poll questions are brought to you by Midland Exteriors. Love the home you live in. Call today for a free estimate.
Well, last week's question was, do you have a problem with two SEC teams making the national title game? That is, of course, Alabama and Missouri. No, I'm just kidding. Georgia. We look at the result. A, yes, 73% of people not a fan of two SEC teams in the title game. 27% say no, they have no problem.
Well, it is what it is. They are the two best teams. Here we go. Here's this week's question. Call your shot here. How far will the Chiefs go in the playoffs? And here are your selections. Lose before the AFC Championship, lose in the AFC Championship, lose in the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, be crowned kings of the universe. Well, that one's not really a choice, but make sure you vote on our Twitter page at @TheDrive13.
Fitz, it struck me how many times the word lose was in that, and then you realize only one team actually gets to the playoffs with a win, so hopefully the Chiefs can do that. Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Is your January looking dry? Get some lotion. Get a humidifier. And better yet, get Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices across local stores to get the best price on a huge selection of drinks perfect for dry January. Every single time. Non-alcoholic wines? Have a look. Ready-made mocktails? Grab a straw and order them up. Beer without the alcohol? Yep, take your pick. You can find all of them here, in the app, in that phone that's in your hand. Could it be any simpler? Nope, not a chance. So shop for great deals on all your dry January beverages or other drinks and get them delivered to your door or blanket fort. Maybe. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. And don't forget to lotion up your elbows. They're looking a little dry.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill sponsored by Vanderbilt's Your Work Boot Center. Well, Scott, we've heard Bill Self talk about KU's defense over and over this season. Is that going to be the weakness for Kansas all year long?
Well, if Kansas doesn't get it figured out, then yes, I think that's the answer. Kansas hasn't been able to stop anyone in the paint, and Bill Self did something Bill Self does not like to do in this last game. He went to his zone, and he didn't go to his zone for one possession, and the other team hit a three, and he's, we're not doing that. No, he went to a zone for an extended stretch of this game. Bill Self used to not even like switching. He wouldn't allow his teams to switch on ball screens until late in the season. That's changed, obviously, a little bit just because, with the way modern offenses have gone. But look, Kansas did some good things defensively against Oklahoma State in that win, and that was evident because Kansas had a 9-minute stretch where they didn't score a point and still managed to kind of comfortably win that game at the end. The game against Texas Tech was so different just from the perspective that Kansas couldn't find answers to get a stop. When Kansas went to that zone, it worked for a little bit, but even then, Texas Tech figured out that it could just attack the big man position on the court for Kansas. At one point, Zach Clements was in the game. He provided some good activity defensively, but then he gave up an and one. Okay, Bill Self goes to the bench. He says, Mitch Lightfoot, get in the game. Mitch Lightfoot gets scored on back-to-back possessions inside. He says, okay, David McCormick, get in the game. David McCormick loses the ball on the other end. He goes 5 small with Jalen Wilson at the 5. That lineup doesn't work great defensively because Jalen Wilson didn't rebound the ball in this game for one, and he doesn't offer any rim protection. David McCormick has been Kansas's best big man this year. That's not saying much. I don't think there have been many great competitors. Mitch Lightfoot at times has been okay. But David McCormick defensively has generally been pretty important to the team just because he's a big body. He can stand in the paint. He doesn't need to block 5 shots a game to discourage guys from coming in there. This game, you got none of that. And when you're not getting the offensive production or the rebounding from the big men spot, it shows that KU is vulnerable. And I tie that rebounding in with defense because rebounding is how you end each defensive possession. If they're not going to defensive rebound, which has been why Jalen Wilson is playing so much even while he struggles, and they're not going to stop guys from getting shots they want, I don't know what they can do to take away something defensively like so many great Bill Self teams have. Fitz, I think it's a problem area. I think it needs to get a lot better from here on out.
I've noted through the years that Bill Self's defense leans so hard on a rim protector. They can take chances on the exterior then of the defense for steals and have someone back there. And if he doesn't have that, the defense just doesn't work the same way it does when he has a big man in the middle that can just stop dribble penetration.
And you talk about erasing mistakes. Ochai Abashi gave up uncharacteristic a few layups, but to your point, if Udoka Azubuike is sitting there in the paint, that's going to be a block. That ball is going out of bounds, but instead they ended up being scores. Let's go back to Tuesday night, a little football here in Houston to recap K-State's 42-20 victory over LSU in the Texas Bowl. Fitz, what did this win mean for Chris Kleiman's program?
It was an important step. It really was. And, knowing his history, he comes from the FCS ranks. He'd never won a bowl game. I mean, when they played in a bowl game 2 seasons ago, that was his first one he'd ever coached in. And it looks like he took the lessons from that bowl game in preparation, and it helped him in this game. And also the late date of this game, the final bowl game to be played prior to the national championship game. The lateness helped Skylar Thompson get more and more healthy, and he was extremely healthy for the game, and it looked like it. He completed 75% of his passes, was razor sharp on third downs as K-State kept converting third down after third down. It was a really nice win for K-State. We all recognize that LSU was depleted, but that isn't K-State's fault. There's nothing for K-State to be ashamed of that they beat a depleted LSU team. It still says LSU on the hats. And as I pointed out on our post-game podcast, we went back and kind of reviewed it. LSU still played this game despite having 40 or fewer scholarship players on the field available on game day. They still played this game with more 4- and 5-star recruits than K-State has ever gotten in its history.
Wow.
That's how much talent LSU has just sitting around on the bench to step in. That isn't true at some of these other schools, and so I don't feel sorry for them. They're the ones who accepted the bid, and K-State played the game. And K-State played really well. They didn't play down to their opponent. But the big news, of course, coming out of the Texas Bowl was the revelation of how good the offense performed in the hands of Colin Klein as interim offensive coordinator. And Colin Klein was named offensive coordinator on a permanent basis this week by Chris Kleiman. I think that's a great step forward for the program. I'll be interested to see how they fill up their 2 openings on their coaching staff. I imagine one will go to Brian LePack, one of the analysts who actually coached in the game, and he will fill one of those slots. But K-State seems to be in a really good position right now. Adrian Martinez is coming in to play quarterback for a season, kind of a bridge season, as K-State should be pretty loaded on both sides of the ball, and they need to take another step forward. 8 wins was nice. As Chris Kleiman said, it's better than 7 wins, and now he just wants to keep the march going forward.
Fitz, you know what this game almost reminded me of a little bit? It's like when a father and son play against each other on a basketball court. Son might be more athletic and more talented, but there's just something that dad's not going to let him win. And yeah, it was a little bit of that. K-State looked like a team that knew what it was doing, knew how to execute, and sure executed at a high level.
And let's not forget, K-State played a bowl game against an SEC team not too long ago with Cody Cook, a receiver at quarterback. So been there, done that. And now we step out of bounds, and Out of Bounds is brought to you by Copeland Insurance Agency, part of your community for more than 60 years.
Well, Fitz, we now know that the Kansas City Chiefs will be the AFC's number 2 seed in the playoffs, with the Titans clinching the number 1 seed today. How much of a loss is it for the Chiefs to miss out on that number 1 seed?
It is. I mean, with only one team getting a bye now and having home field advantage, which I think it's weird that only one's getting a bye, either 2 or none. Come on, guys. It just is really disappointing that they blew that opportunity in one of their final games and couldn't get the win that they really needed. If they keep advancing, they will have to go on the road, but we will see how it all plays out. The playoffs have a weird way of making some teams step up and other good teams kind of fall by the wayside. They got a lot to make up for after what happened last year, but it's looking good. I'll just say this. I almost think that might have been a little last-second added wake-up call to this team that they're not so good they can dominate everyone. You better go show up every week.
I personally do think the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, just to bounce off what you just said. I think the one thing they're missing out on here is just a chance to recover, whether it's with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce at the end of the game, even just giving everyone a week to kind of refocus. I think that's where this is really lost. But hey, at the same time, if you're the best team in the NFL or the best team in the AFC, whatever, go out and prove it. And I think the Chiefs have that opportunity in front of them now.
Absolutely. Now let's hear from the fans. Our fan question is sponsored by Meadowlark, supporting people in living their best lives. Our fan question this week is, Scott, how much would a healthy Bobby Pettiford help the team right now? That's from Daniel in Lenexa. You say what?
I think he would help probably a lot. It's tough to know just because he played such a limited role early in the year. If you don't know, Bobby Pettiford, freshman point guard from Kansas. Bill Self's very high on him. He's called him the next great Kansas point guard. I think he'd be helping a lot more now with the injury to Remy Martin. And it seems like Remy Martin's injury is something he can kind of play through maybe on a pain tolerance basis, but it really hasn't looked the same when he's been dinged up. He played a limited role in this last game. Kansas has got to get him healthy, and I do think it would help them to have Bobby Pettiford back just because Joe Yesufu hasn't really emerged and hasn't really done anything of note in that backcourt to help him. Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show. It's now time to take a look at our predictions. Remember to make your predictions on our Twitter page at The Drive 13. Let's look at last week's results. Of course, we haven't had the college football championship yet. The fans voted for Georgia, but heading into that, the viewers went 2-0. I went 2-0. Scott went 2-0 in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to
Which is kind of summing up the season, unfortunately, for Scott. Here's this week's picks, and we're going to start. This is all college basketball this week. Kansas is an 11.5-point favorite versus West Virginia. Scott.
Fitz, you know this, had a very tough time with this line. I'll take Kansas. We'll see what the health of the team is, but I think Kansas can stretch one out.
It's a big number. I will take West Virginia because of the size of that number.
So Fitz, next is K-State plus 8.5 versus Texas Tech. We kind of shuffled this line around. Who you got on this one?
Well, it's so hard to know who K-State's even going to have. Will they be at full strength? I would imagine so. That's 9 points. I think K-State will keep it in single digits. I'll take the Cats to at least cover.
Fitz, would not shock me either way. I'll go with Texas Tech. Just played well against Kansas, but I think K-State is a lot better than maybe people realize as well.
We're not confident in our picks at all. We're picking opposite teams, and neither one of us feel good about it. Our last game of the week is Texas is a pick'em at Iowa State. I will go with the home clones.
I will take Texas. Chris Beard, please don't let me down.
Yeah. Ask Texas Tech fans about that. Again, make your picks on our Twitter page at The Drive 13. It's now time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One. Buy local for a strong local community. Here's Scott Chasen.
Well, I'll keep it brief here. I think this last game was another indicator of what DeJuan Harris can be in the good and what he's still kind of missing out on. One game after he made a defensive play that Bill Self said might have been the best play by anyone in college basketball this year. Personally, I think that was a little bit of an exaggeration, but a good hustle play to steal the ball. This game, he's kind of camped in the corner. He didn't shoot when open, and Texas Tech stopped guarding him. If he's going to play big minutes, he has to shoot when he's open, and he has to involve himself in the offense. Otherwise, it makes it too hard on the other four guys on the court.
Very good. Well, I tell you what, Scott, last week, or a few weeks ago, I was able to announce that my cancer is in remission. Unfortunately, I have gotten close with a number of men who also have prostate cancer, and one of them was a former player that I rebonded with and a former coach at Kansas State, Matt Miller. Matt Miller died today at the age of 49, and that is younger than what the medical community wants to test men for prostate cancer. They won't even consider the PSA unless there's symptoms until you're 50. That's got to change. Matt was hit with prostate cancer at 47 and dead by 49. When you're young and you get it, the odds aren't good. That's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.